This game is extremely good. I just want to start this video off with that because holy heck is there a lot inside of this interesting surprise demo. What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, talking today about Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. Now this game actually just got a demo released today, unexpectedly, and it's a pretty beefy chunk of the game itself, giving us a chance to experiment with the interesting leveling system, the very difficult bosses, and honestly, the tons and tons of deaths that we're definitely going to experience. Wo Long is an action RPG. Think of it as something like a Soulsborne or something like Nioh, but the difference is that whereas those games are typically based in like European or Japanese mythology, Wo Long is based in Chinese mythology. Now the interesting part of this is that Chinese mythology is very centered on the idea of spirit, of elements, of soul, and that is really conveyed expertly inside of the combat. Now when you start the game up, you make your own custom character and you choose your own elemental type, things like fire, which gives you better straight up attack, things that can give you better earth defense or better water for better sneaking effects. I think this is interesting because as soon as you even start doing this tutorial, you realize that this is a much more advanced action RPG. Now I want to talk about the systems in this because there is a surprising amount of technical details that make even small skirmishes incredibly important in Wo Long. Now when you first start playing it, you're going to notice that the controls themselves are on the surface incredibly easy. Square or X is your like typical attack, and then Y or triangle is your spirit attack, which is slightly stronger but consumes a bit of mana. There's a lot of casual magic usage inside of this game. While we're battling against corrupted tigers, big evil deities, or zombies and stuff like that, you are going to be slinging around your personal elemental type. Like for me, I went fire specialization, and boy howdy did I have a lot of fun flame throwing everybody I came across. But what's interesting about this is that Wo Long, it definitely has this sliding momentum system. Now what I mean by that is that while you're trying to pressure people, there's almost this staggering where if you hit people frequently, if you really get in there fast and stay aggressive using quick strikes and spirit strikes, a lot of times you can do a quick takedown and sort of thin a bigger group of dangerous enemies, which can be incredibly important. And it does bring me to the most interesting aspect of this game, which is morale. So this game of course does have a standard leveling system very similar to Dark Souls, where by attacking people, by killing them, you get a little bit of experience points, and whenever you get to that next big checkpoint, whether it is a bonfire or a big battle standard in this case, you can spend these points called ki to permanently level yourself up, giving you more, HP, more attack power, stuff like that. The more interesting element of this though is called morale. Think of morale as a temporary level. By progressing, by killing tough enemies, by surviving and not being struck too much, you maintain an extra level bonus. This can scale all the way up to plus 20, but if you even get to like plus 10 morale, you're pretty dang beefy. As long as you're being careful, as long as you're blocking, as long as you're parrying and dodging to the best of your ability, you can a lot of times build up this better morale and keep it for longer periods of time, which makes it a smoother sailing. Now the key word here is definitely temporary. If enemies manage to hit you with their own heavy spirit strikes, it will reduce your morale. Or when you die, that obviously takes a big chunk out of your morale and actually makes it where you get sent back to the graveyard. And additionally, your enemies level up. Your enemies can sap your morale, which means that even a random guy who happens to kill you, like a random soldier, can get a morale boost, and therefore when you encounter him again, he's a tougher foe to face. Killing him though does give you your morale and your ki back. So I really like the system where if you're being extra vigilant, if you're trying to dodge, if you're really fighting effectively, you feel stronger on the battlefield, not just mentally because you're prepared for that next fight, but I do kind of enjoy the fact that it's just cool that there's this interesting like yin and yang, this built up powerhouse of not making a mistake. But let's just talk generally about the combat. So you do have long range weapons, which are bows and crossbows. I didn't use those a lot. Honestly, my favorite stuff thus far has just been the fact that they give you so many different weapons. Everything from short swords to heavy blades to freaking halberds and even little dual short swords. All of this really, I mean, I tested out every single type of weapon. All of them feel great. Now, this does sort of work like Dark Souls, in my opinion, or Nioh, in that whenever you get the best weapon that has the highest attack power, it's usually best to equip that. These enemies don't drop a ton of loot, but every like 20 or 30 guys that I dropped would give me a slightly better piece of armor or a shinier hat or something like that. This, so far, has not been one of those games with tons of different stat points. In this opening demo portion, everything is pretty much just, all right, what has the highest attack or the highest defense? Maybe later in the game things are going to get more complicated and have special on-use buttons, but as it stands, I kind of like these early straightforward moments where it is just about living and dying and dodging. Which brings me to the actually crazy part of this, which is the bosses themselves. So this demo is the entirety of what seems to be the opening area. You start off just fighting some standard soldiers, some heavier, beefier dudes and big gauntlets and stuff like that, but after a bit, you start to fight much more magical beasties, like this weird tiger, which the way he's animated actually is super cool to me. He like almost stretches out and becomes like liquid during certain parts of his strikes, which really nicely conveys that something about him is mystical and off, which is very cool. There was also this big huge bird thing which ate my face with lightning powers, and then the last boss, which is a super cool guy in a cave. The entirety of this demo, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it was pretty tough. I say this is a guy who's beaten every single Soulsborne, all of Dark Souls, Bloodborne, obviously I platinumed Elden Ring. I love this style of difficulty, and here I have to say it's very nicely balanced, but if your morale starts to dip, you almost have to grind and build that power back up so you can go into these darker dungeons and mystical caves once again. Overall, I actually find this demo to be incredibly fun. The biggest downside is that the enemies feel a little bit, well, boring looking. Some of these random soldiers, even some of the creatures in the cave and stuff towards the end of the demo, not super flashy. The environmental detail also kind of bland. A lot of times while walking through these camps and checking out side pathways and stuff, I certainly wasn't wowed. Which isn't necessarily a downside. I mean, not every aspect or every section of Dark Souls 2 is the most mind-blowing thing ever, but with a game that has such heavy cool mythology, I did hope for a bit more visual pizzazz. As it stands, I do think that Wulong Fallen Dynasty, I think this is going to be a game that's going to get a lot of attention very dutifully in 2023. You should download this demo and try it for yourself. If you manage to beat it, it actually gets taken offline here in 9 days, so you only have like a week and a half to actually play it. But if you beat the demo, they're giving you a fancy hat that you can play in the final game, which is cool. Great. Okay. Tell me your thoughts about this game in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. Ooh, man, what a pleasant surprise. Seriously, I had no idea this was coming out. This is awesome. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.